I'm attorney Zach Townsend. Let's talk about the right of first refusal, which is contained in many or most parenting plans. The right of first refusal might be specifically called out as not appropriate in this particular parenting plan, for example. The right of first refusal is when one parent is designated to have parenting time and is unable to exercise that parenting time, then they're required to offer the child or the children to the other parent who's not scheduled to have parenting time. So that way, the child is most likely to be with a parent. And it's based on this premise that if a parent is available, then that's who the child should be with, not some third party non parent, but a parent. So, and that makes a lot of good sense, especially in theory, especially because when the parties were together, if they were in, let's say, a long term relationship, then it was more common that there would be extended time periods like that where the child would be with the other parent because the first parent's not around. So that's part of the idea of the right of first refusal. Now, it's a funny word, so don't let it throw you, but all it means is that when a parent is scheduled or designated to have parenting time, they can't be present during their parenting time. Well, then they have to offer the kids back to the other parent during that time. So the right of first refusal, it requires communication and cooperation. And if the parties cannot communicate and cooperate, it can be a struggle because if a parent is unavailable, they have to notify the other parent. So that takes communication. And then they have to get the children to the other parent. So that takes cooperation. And that sounds like for many of my clients would be quite a challenge. So unfortunately, a lot of the judges say like, oh, they have to work it out. They have to figure out how to get along as if there's not one person that is really creating a lot of problems, as if it takes two to tango, quote unquote, even though you could tell, well, there's a primary aggressor who's creating hell for everyone. So why are we acting as if this is just something that's just happens to occur to people? So sometimes you'll get that with the joint decision-making attitudes or the right of first refusal attitudes where the judges or the guardians ad litem will say that it just, they're going to have to parents are going to have to figure out a way to get along. They've got all these years left, when that a lot of times is just not fair, and it's disconnected from reality. So keeping in kind with that example, the location of the other parent becomes the business of the first parent, because if the children are not with that parent, then the right of first refusal triggers if it's designated to be that parent's parenting time. Well, then they have to offer to the other parent when they're unavailable. So how does the other parent know they're unavailable? Because they know where they're at. So they start to ask, where are you at? What's your location? Give me your address. Give me your exact physical location right now. And it becomes this big bully intimidation situation where it becomes exploited, and it becomes like a tool that's weaponized by somebody who's aggressive, who's not actually trying to be part of the solution or trying to work in good faith, but instead trying to be scary and make things difficult and maybe punish you, or whatever the warped approach is that certain people have. That's why the right of first refusal may not be appropriate during that type of a situation. So the right of first refusal, and if it's in the parenting plan, it's typically going to be reciprocal, which means that it applies to both sides. So it's possible, and it's certainly not unheard of, for only one parent to have the right of first refusal. And so that means that, let's say there are two parents and one's a mom and the other's a dad, and the mom has the right of first refusal from the dad. So if the dad's unavailable during the dad's parenting time, then dad has to offer the child to mom. But the dad does not have the right of first refusal, where if mom is unavailable, mom has to offer the children to dad. So, well, why is that? Well, it might be because dad has very limited time, and there's lots of time that mom has in this particular hypothetical, which means there would be a lot more opportunity for mom to be required to offer the children to the dad. Likewise, the flip side of the same coin is that with the dad having less or minimal parenting time in this hypothetical, the dad would have a much less likely chance that he wouldn't be present for it, so you'd probably be there, so it would be less likely to need the right of first refusal. It's also plausible that we know that the dad in this example is frequently out of town for work, and so for that reason, we want to specify that. So there are different reasons why it could apply to one person, but normally, especially in the context of an agreement, it's going to be reciprocal, meaning it would apply to both sides. So the right of first refusal, like a lot of the terms that we've talked about in parenting plans, can be specifically tailored where we have decisions made in advance, so that way if it comes up as a dispute later, we already have that addressed. And it could help, for example, this hypothetical, where, as I had mentioned, dad in this hypothetical family travels for work. So there might be times where the dad would have parenting time and can't exercise that, so he needs to offer the children to mom. It could just state right there in the parenting plan that anytime dad goes out of town for work, he's got to offer the kids to mom, and then that's it. And then we won't have to get into all the details. So we could specify as to why. So this could be customized in a sense of, okay, the right of first refusal shall not apply when the children are with either party's parents, any grandparents of the children, for example. Doesn't apply, would be specified. Usually it's not specified whether or not it applies for certain people but not other people. But the judge will apply some reasonable construction to this arrangement. If this is in your parenting plan, the judge might say, well, then the child can never go see grandma then without you there. That's not fair. That's not what was intended by this, so I'm going to allow it. And that's normally how it would be, because it's not the intent. And usually a lot of judges are grandparents, by the way. So the right of first refusal could specifically state that it shall apply for any period in excess of 8 hours except for work or for employment purposes. So if you would choose to go to a concert with a friend or on a date or something like that without the children, well then it does apply. But if you're working, well then it doesn't apply, because you could specify. So all these are different ways to tailor the right of first refusal into a way that's a little bit more specific, which could help people overcome this issue, so we could bring closure to the case with by entering an agreed parenting plan, that is. So I touched on an issue of right of first refusal that's really important that we've not talked about yet, and that is the time frame. How long a period of time should the parent be absent from their child during their parenting time to be required to offer the children to the other parent? Well, usually there would be a time frame specified. So any period in excess of 2 hours or any period in excess of 4 hours. If the parent with parenting time is unavailable, they have to offer the children to the other parent. So one way to address this when we're talking about that out of town example, where one of the parents works out of town, is to make the right of first refusal period apply for instances of 24 hours or more, or to make the right of first refusal apply in instances of overnight parenting time. If the respondent is unable to be present during the respondent's parenting time overnight, then the respondent shall offer the minor children to the petitioner as part of the right of first refusal. So you could specify it in different ways, and it depends on what you're trying to accomplish as well. So that's part of, and you can see where my head is at, is we're not just asking how can we use this to put different rules in place. It's how can we use this to address the real life concern that exists. So the right of first refusal, if it doesn't specify the amount of time, well, it would be a reasonable time, but again, there's a lack of clarity there, because if you were to go to the neighbor's house to borrow a cup of sugar, that would not be a situation where you have to offer the kids to the other parent, right? If you were to go to the grocery store that's 10 minutes away, you get a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk and you're back in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, should the right of first refusal apply then? Probably not. So the circumstance where it would apply could be hazy. So sometimes there's more detail in it to specify how it works. But generally, if you have a really cooperative and good working relationship with the other parent, the right of first refusal would be appropriate. If you cannot really communicate with the other party, you cannot trust the other party, they're intimidating you or wanting to know private information about you to scare you, then the right of first refusal would be a bad idea in that circumstance, because that would potentially give that abusive person what feels like a license to be able to demand this information and push you around, because that's their right as a dad. So it really is going to depend on the context. And also, you can certainly offer the children to the other parent, even if the right of first refusal is not listed in the parenting plan. So there will be, with a good cooperative, functioning, working relationship as co-parents existing anyway, there will be circumstances where naturally one of the parents will say, well, I'm doing this thing, I'm going out, or I got to work out of town this weekend, can the kids be with you? So that would happen naturally and normally as well, even if it were not included in the parenting plan, if there is a good working relationship, if the parties have the ability to cooperate, if the parties have an ability to communicate, and there's not a domestic violence situation, then the right of first refusal and this premise that the child or the children should be with a parent whenever they could be, instead of with a a third party instead of a stranger or someone that they don't know as well, somebody who is like part of them and who they share a strong bond with. Easy money. Why would you not do that? Well, it's because the ideal doesn't always fit the uh, situation the same way once it's put into practice.